Has anybody else's nervous systems just been going, wow, yeah, wow, lately? Because mine certainly has. I think others will relate. It's kind of in the air. You got combination of a whole lot of things, plus just winter. Things are kind of rough. And honestly, even if there's a lot of people out there whose nervous systems are clearly going wild and it's clearly affecting their heads and their states and what they're doing, but some people are also just trying to ignore that. That's the way that a lot of the country deals with mental health, and so we gotta acknowledge that for sure. But anyway, gosh, mine has been, yeah, winter's always tough. I mean, I work in a lab that's basically a basement. Like, it's in the middle of the building. And so the only light I get is when I go on walks, which I try and do. I'm actually just realizing I didn't do one today. And that may have led or helped with my current anxiety. But anyway, I don't get much sunlight, and I'm in the Pacific Northwest. Like, we're higher north than Toronto in Portland, further north. So Portland Trailblazers, we the north, Toronto Raptors, you not the north, you south of us. Even though you're in the northern country, all right, I'll give you that. Anywho, yeah, my anxiety has been kind of wild, and it's an interesting thing. I talk about it. I feel like I haven't talked about it that much lately, but I do talk about it a lot, so I get self-conscious that I'm talking about it too much. But it's a big part of my life, so I don't feel bad. Um, anyway, it's interesting. Right before the pandemic, I kind of got a handle. Like, I had my first ever panic attacks because I had upcoming wisdom tooth surgery, and that just like set it off. And I'd always been an anxious person, but once you hit like panic attack level, you've just unlocked panic attacks. And so after that, I kind of got on some SSRIs and went through some therapy and was able to better like learn tools and learn how to cope with it, which was very nice. I kind of got that figured out and moved out on my own right before the pandemic hit, because it's been an anxious time ever since, and it still is. We're still in a pandemic. But I think that's kind of where my mind was at today. I mean, there's a whole lot of things to worry about. And what I realize with my anxiety and with my panic attacks is a lot of times it's when my processing factory or whatever in my brain, like when I'm kind of shut down from the things that I do to cope with the world and cope with the things that make me anxious. When there's kind of like a blockage there, it just builds up and builds up and builds up, and I'm kind of unaware of it. And then a few things happen and unconsciously, and then just the dam bursts. And that's, to me, what my panic feels like. And I think that probably makes sense to people who also experience anxiety and panic attacks. And I suspect that there's a lot more these days than even 4 years ago. So if you're out there and you're dealing with that, I'm sorry. I'm here with you. It's really scary, but it's also quite normal. But anyway, so it's been very helpful that I kind of have not a full grip on it. Like, sometimes my nervous system is just freaking out, but I am always able to get the help I need or find the support I need, or also just be able to kind of stop it before it gets really bad. Like, I think there's kind of this like feedback loop, right? So a lot of mine is physical symptoms. I'll just feel a weird little thing, and then that will make me nervous that, oh, there's something wrong with my heart, and oh, I have this tightness, so it's definitely a heart attack. And then it's, oh, I have inoperable cancer, I'm going to die, or I have a headache, and then that snowballs into, I'm definitely having a stroke. And so now that I'm kind of aware of that in myself, that all the different anxieties of my life kind of manifest into that physical way, because I'm able to identify that. One of my ways to like stop one in its tracks is just to acknowledge, like, oh yeah, this is a thing that's happened before. I've been here before. It feels like I'm dying. It feels like your brain's racing 100 miles a minute and your chest is super tight. And then I worry I'm going to pass out, and I live alone, so I'm screwed. But I'm able to be like, no, I've been here before. This is kind of like a thing that happens sometimes, and here's the reasons. Like, here are the things I'm anxious about, and a lot of times I'll go in the shower. So you got the shower brain activation locked and loaded, and that always, I mean, everyone knows you have good thoughts in the shower. But then also, at least for me, when I'm having a panic attack, I have some of my best thoughts. Like, it is almost like this crazy energy, like all the worries in my life are rushing through me, through my brain. And so that's very overwhelming, and that leads to like the physical sensations, and then like I feel some weird thing on my arm and I'll hyper focus on it, which then like brings about more feelings of like pain or phantom pain, and it's a horror deal. It's not fun. Hopefully some people are relating to this, but what I find really helps is when I'm able to just be thinking and then be able to also be aware and be present and remind myself, oh no, you have panic attacks and you are very anxious, and here's the things that have happened before and what has helped before, and it's okay. And it's just basically a lot of reminding myself that I am okay. And that's good, always a good thing to do. But usually when I'm starting to like either blocking it or starting to wind it down, that's when I'm able to identify the things in my recent life or in my day that have kind of, I think, been building up and built up that pressure that I wasn't like fully consciously aware. So anyway, I have a lot of good thoughts when I'm having a panic attack. And in some ways that's kind of nice, like remembering and recognizing that like even though a panic attack is very shitty and I hate them, that it's not necessarily a bad thing always. Like there's a silver lining, and it's just kind of what happens when the pressure builds up and that releases it. And so it's a bit like throwing up. Like I always feel better after a panic attack. Some of the really bad ones I feel really crappy the next day, and then I can get really scared that I'm going to have more of them more often. But usually what it is, it's just like flushing out the system, and especially if I've been able to think about what it is that's causing that anxiety and what I can do to alleviate that, or if there's like something I've just needed to address, it shows me, it guides me to what that thing is in my mind, because in the panic attack it's like it's blaring, like I can't ignore it anymore. I can't keep it in, which I've been doing unconsciously or subconsciously, I guess. Um anyway, so yeah, so today it was probably just a lot of like COVID stuff too, because we are at this point. Like I am, and ever since the beginning, I've been much more worried about COVID than a lot of people. And so it's interesting. Like I do have a little bit of that hypochondriac within me, which I'm pretty cognizant of. But at the same point, like especially where we are today, a lot of the current COVID response from the government is basically what's the phrase I heard that's really poignant and good? It's the I don't think this is the phrase, but it's like the social manufacture of the end of the pandemic. And I don't feel like, it's kind of weird. Like I still follow a lot of stuff with COVID, and like numbers are really bad. A lot of people are dying lately. The CDC just said that the hospitalizations aren't necessarily going to go down. Like they don't know what it is. And probably in the last year, and a half too, like the guy who just got hired for Biden's chief of staff, Jeff Zients, he was the COVID response guy for quite a while, and he kind of was spearheading a lot of the moves that the Biden White House made to like downplay COVID and to make people less worried about it. Things like changing, I think he was there for changing of the community levels to the map. Because I don't even remember, was this 2021 or 2022, but all of a sudden overnight CDC just like changed up the way that they were reporting things. So instead of the map looking like high risk and red, everything went down to green, because they just went to only hospitalizations as the only metric. At the same time, like we've been getting a lot more immunity in the community, but it's basically using the logic that hospitalization's the only thing that really matter during COVID, and which sucks because there's a lot of like knock-on effects, like long COVID, and then just other bad things that can happen when you get COVID. And the other thing is that type of policy does not take into account like immunocompromised people, people who are at a lot higher risk for bad results from COVID, especially in a time where just the variants are evolving so much and like we can't keep up. Like going vaccine only is clearly not enough, but the state of play now is that we've just basically normalized whatever this level, and kind of using the same logic as like kind of the more conservatives and the Republicans early on. And it is interesting because they still think Biden is like a COVID demon, like doing all these things, like taking away the liberties, when in reality, like he's been not great on it in actual like prevention and stuff. And so, anyway, I think that's where my anxiety has been because my best of far is going through chemo right now. And so he's like, I think he's 85, mid 80s. And on chemo, you're basically immunocompromised. Like they told him to act as if you have no COVID protection if you're totally unvaccinated. And so I think that's just been my anxiety's been sitting there because I'm also worried about getting COVID again. Like it kicked my ass, and then I've been super sick 2 different times this year. And so it's just like I feel like getting sick like is rough ever since getting COVID. And so I wonder like if my immune system is a little hit from that, and I'm worried that if I get reinfected, it's going to be even worse. So yeah, it's an interesting place though, because I don't really talk about COVID as much anymore. Except I have some friends who are kind of similar minded to me, but we're at this place where like there's no mandates, things have fully opened up, and it's just that normalization of it's just gonna be what it is, and yeah. So I pay closer attention to it, and it's weird like because I still have like gone indoors to eat and done risky things that like immunocompromised people probably wouldn't do. But like currently, especially with Bestafar, like we're masking around him, and I've been rapid testing before being around anyone who's high risk, and when I'm in like shared spaces where people who are high risk like have to be in. So like grocery stores or at work, like I'm masking up because some people like can't. There's just certain things like so many people going to pharmacies surrounded by unmasked people where if they get COVID, like they're super fucked. And so anyway, it's become more and more apparent how like out of the norm I am with the amount I'm still taking precautions. And yeah, that's probably part of the reason I don't talk about it as much. And just knowing that like there's not help coming in a way that is what I think needs to be done to protect people. And yeah, it's kind of ugly out there. And it makes me real anxious. And so I think I was just extra thinking about it lately. So there's all my thoughts. Hopefully this was like a helpful overnight oats thing, especially if you're someone with anxiety. Maybe it helps to hear. Hopefully it doesn't like stress anyone out, but it's definitely been good for me. Like I just had to record right after I got out of the shower because that's when the thoughts were steaming up, and this has been nice for me to share too. So if you're still listening, thanks for listening. Slobcore out, baby.